You are listening to the Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio, a prime-time politics podcast from CPAC. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Welcome to the podcast. Well, having lost another member of his caucus to the Liberal benches last week, the Conservative leader is back on the offensive, with Pierre Poilievre attacking the Prime Minister's economic record at a Canadian club luncheon in Toronto.
Mr. Carney has been wrong about every major economic issue of the last decade. When he was the head of the Bank of England, he printed money leaving that country with the worst inflation in the G7 and a housing crisis that deprived an entire generation of youth of home ownership. He wrongly predicted that COVID would cause deflation, that prices would drop. And the result was that he advised governments to print copious amounts of money, giving us the worst inflation in 40 years.
Now, Poilievre's speech picks up on criticism he made over the past weekend, poking holes at the Prime Minister's reputation for being the, quote, right man to handle the economic challenges Canada currently faces, a general impression amongst many Canadians backed up by months of polling. But take a listen to how Mr. Poilievre pushed back on that in a recent interview with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
There's one thing that's worse than being uneducated, and it's being badly educated. And Mr. Carney is very badly educated on economics. And that is why he has been wrong on every single economic issue of our time. Every one of them. Net zero, his net zero alliance, which was meant to defund our energy sector, that alliance has gone bankrupt. His money printing, his support of carbon taxes, his opposition to the pipeline to the Pacific.
Well, that is the setup to this week's podcast. And joining us right now are Robert Fife, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël Denis Bellavance, Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Hello to all three of you.
Hey. Hi.
Okay, so, we're going to talk about the specific criticisms in a moment. But first, I want to talk about the timing of all this, because, when Parliament was not sitting, we were talking about how we were now seeing this more diplomatic, perhaps more conciliatory approach from the Conservative leader. Parliament returns, and so does the pugilist. Talk to us about the timing and why you think we're hearing this strategy now, Bob.
Well, because that's in his DNA. He can't help himself. I mean, how many times has we've said, oh, he's going to back off, he's going to reinvent himself, he's going to be a kinder, gentler Pierre Poilievre, and he jumps right back to being, the nasty little partisan guy that he has been for 20 years in Parliament. The leopard can't change his stripes. Or spots, I should say.
That leopard I want to see. Tonda, what do you make of the timing of this?
I mean, the timing, I think, is more prompted by the pressure he's feeling within his own caucus, and that, having lost now 4 of his own caucus members, and knowing that there is a number of others who object to his leadership, he's in defense mode. And I think, I'm not sure whether it was because he felt he was in a comfortable place to say something like that, but tactically and strategically, that line of attack against Carney, his badly educated on economics, was, factually incorrect, but doesn't make any sense. I mean, in some respects, on some of the go-forward economic agenda direction, the Conservatives actually support some of the things that Carney's proposing, moving faster on resource development, streamlining some of the regulations. Now, the Conservatives would have him go faster, but to suggest that Carney's an economic idiot doesn't seem to me to be the way to go. It's not in line with what Canadians believe. He's not reinforcing a message that works for him. Or I'm sure a lot of his MPs are probably sitting there thinking, that's probably not the smartest route.
Yeah, Joël Denis?
I like the fact that you pointed out that we've seen 2 Pierre Poilievre in the last couple of weeks when the House was not sitting. I think that speech was particularly to his caucus. But now that he's lost more MPs, I think now he made a speech this week addressed to the base of the Conservative Party to keep his job as leader of the Conservative Party, because I think he's losing more and more support within the Conservative Party, although no one so far has took the initiative, and no one has taken the initiative of, invoking the Reform Act or the steps to get rid of the leader. But those 2 speeches, to me, indicate that Mr. Poilievre is less and less secure in his job. Why go back on that kind of a MAGA-style speech that we've seen this week. I don't understand it, other than to say that now he fears for his job and he's trying to protect his support from his base.
Look, a lot of conservatives don't understand it either. I mean, don't go after Mark Carney on his economic credentials. Mark Carney has a BA from Harvard. He's got an MA and a PhD from Oxford University. He headed 2 central banks, and he was vice chair or chair of a $1 trillion corporation. Pierre Poilievre got a BA from Carleton, which he never finished. He had to do it through, I believe, a write-in course, and he spent 20 years in Parliament. And conservatives are saying that's not the issue you want to fight him on. You don't have any credentials. And then you have Christine Lagarde, the former IMF president, who's also now the president of the European Central Bank, coming out and lauding Mr. Carney for his the way he handled the 2008 financial crisis with all the central bankers and putting the kind of regulations in place, and also applauding him for the way he warned the UK off of Brexit. I mean, this is not a hill you want to die on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And to that, Christine Lagarde, when she wrote, this was for Time Magazine, she described him as a rock star bank governor. So point taken. But I'll also make the point that I went to Carleton, great school.
You're not criticizing Carney. You're not claiming you have more economic credentials than him, do you?
No. I just have more foundation. You talked about the pressure that Pierre Poilievre's under, though, Tonda. What are you hearing about that? Because yes, it doesn't look good to have 4 crossover, right, in the past few months, and there is speculation that there will be more floor crossers to come, and more likely from
every day.
more likely from the Conservative caucus than any other caucus on the Hill. So talk to us about the kind of pressure you're hearing, the kind of tension you're hearing that exists right now amongst that Conservative caucus.
I spoke to a senior Conservative, not inside caucus, but someone who has pretty direct lines inside that caucus and has a real relationship of trust with a number of MPs, who said that they actually do have the numbers if they were to go and invoke the caucus power to force a secret ballot on leadership, but they also know they do not have someone to come forward and take that on, either as be the leader of the charge or someone who can step into the breach to be the leader, who wants to take on the challenge of trying to replace Pierre Poilievre. So that's the tension inside. Mm-hmm. There are many Conservative MPs, though I don't think the majority, who are very dissatisfied and worried about their political futures under Poilievre right now. But where do they go? There is no, back in the day of Stockwell Day, when he was leading the Canadian Alliance, there were a number of MPs, popular MPs, Chuck Straw, Monty Solberg and whatnot, who organized their way out of the then Canadian Alliance caucus under Stockwell Day and formed a separate caucus, the Democratic Reform Caucus. And then they eventually joined hands with the other conservative option, the Progressive Conservatives, to move forward. Until Stephen Harper came and rallied them all together. Right now, there is no other, if you're a Conservative who's dissatisfied with Pierre Poilievre's leadership inside caucus, and you don't want to be a Liberal, there's no other vehicle unless you're prepared to take the whole crew with you and walk out, and that's not happening. But tension there is inside, and I don't think we've seen the end of it.
Yeah, what are you hearing, Joël Denis?
I agree with Tonda. There's a lot of tensions within the caucus. I'm surprised that we haven't seen anybody from Quebec Tory caucus now leave the caucus because I would have...
that was the speculation, by the way.
Yes.
Tonda and I were in Montreal for the Liberal convention. That was the discussion that it's probably the Quebec wing of the Conservative Party that people are looking at.
I know for a fact that the Liberals are talking to 3 Quebec MPs, the Conservative MPs, but they're really reluctant to make a move now. But, unsatisfaction is growing. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'm surprised that nobody has made the move from Quebec, but I wouldn't be surprised if this comes in the coming weeks, because the speech that Mr. Poilievre made this week, I don't think has convinced Conservative MPs from Quebec that Mr. Poilievre is going the right way, attacking the economic credentials or arguing who's got the biggest CV between Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney. I don't think he's winning the hearts and souls of voters in Quebec. And so I think there is going to be a lot of soul searching within the Conservative caucus in Quebec. And if that's the case, if somebody from Quebec does quit and sit as an independent or join the Liberals, I think this is going to be the final straw.
The strangest thing about that economic speech he gave was not just that they doubled down on what we've just been discussing, but that most of it, was the platform that voters rejected, the platform that didn't win him enough support to form government, despite having grown the vote share last year. And only a part of it dealt with some of the more constructive proposals he's put forward on the table now. Instead of what he did abroad when he went to London and Berlin, and what he did in Toronto prior to that, and some of what he did in the States was to put forward some other ideas to counter the Carney agenda. And in this speech, I found it was very much a throwback. And I thought, I don't understand it.
Yeah. Any point in that, Bob?
Well, look, I've heard the same thing as Tonda and JD, that they are continuing to talk to Conservative MPs. They are focusing, some of them are focusing on the Quebec Conservative caucus. But I expect that we are going to see more defections. And I think what happened this week, the way Mr. Poilievre behaved, is the kind of thing that just makes people shake their head and say, look, I'm out of here.
I do wonder what is the level of patience among the Conservative caucus when so many of them ran with the expectation that they would govern, because the nomination process happened for many ridings when Trudeau was still Prime Minister. How many of them will have the patience to sit for 3.5 years before a federal election?
It's pretty demoralizing to be sitting on the opposition benches for a chance at winning government, because we don't know if that will happen in 3.5 years.
I
mean, when you look at the poll numbers, it's almost insurmountable. I mean, obviously it can change. We all know that. But the fact that Mr. Carney is leading by he's at 29%, and Mr. Poilievre is way behind him.
In preferred Prime Minister.
And the Liberal Party is still is ahead about 13 or 14 points. That's pretty demoralizing. And now they've got a majority. What are you going to do? Just twiddle your thumbs on the opposition benches? And the problem that Mr. Poilievre has had throughout his leadership is that he's a one-man band. He doesn't work with the caucus. He's not like a Brian Mulroney who can bring everybody together. That's not his style. And that's why you end up seeing people saying, hell with this, I want to go sit with the Liberals, and I can hopefully do something for my constituents, or maybe even when there's a cabinet shuffle, get into cabinet.
The minority government, it brought in itself some discipline within the Conservative caucus, because if there's an election to fight next month or in 6 months, they were sticking together. Now that the election is 3 years away, I think it will loosen up some minds and probably be thinking about, am I going to be a candidate under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre in the next election? That's the question now that they're asking themselves.
But the only thing he's got going for him right now, frankly, is, as Tonda says, there's nobody obviously in the wings.
Well, and I will say, when we were covering the Calgary Conservative Convention, you looked at the coalition. This is a coalition built by Pierre Poilievre, and so that is the bit of the conundrum for.
It's not much of a coalition, frankly. It's right wing and MAGA.
Well, but still, someone will have to lead it if he leaves
a coalition is what you're seeing Mark Carney put together, which is, a lot of progressives, some conservatives, some centrists, or the old Conservative Party of Brian Mulroney, which is had red Tories, conservatives, and right wingers. And right now, this party, the party that Pierre Poilievre has built, is pretty much to very much right of center.
Yeah. Okay, listen, I'm going to pick up on that coalition in a moment, but you were mentioning numbers earlier, Bob, and I was looking at 338 Canada. We have a graphic here. Take a look at basically the approval rating when it comes to what Canadians think about this government. And when 338 Canada aggregates all the polls, you're looking at a 58% approval rating for this government, which has me wonder the effectiveness, whether or not the criticisms that Pierre Poilievre has made about Mark Carney, and I take all your points about his past CV, his educational accomplishments, but when he goes through everything he predicted was wrong, is there any potential that type of argumentation might actually poke holes at the Prime Minister's popularity and or his standing amongst Canadians right now?
I mean, I think that the more relevant criticism is not whether or not you agree with whatever Mark Carney's views were over the last decade. The more relevant criticism that Pierre Poilievre could make that might have some traction with Canadians right now is he landing a good deal for Canada with the U.S.? Is he managing to get breaks? Is he going to tackle the housing and affordability and immigration issues in the country with practical solutions that fix things in people's lives? Those are the kinds of things that maybe will have traction with Canadians. I don't see the look back as the thing. It's the forward-looking thing. And to that sort of point, I don't see that Poilievre is successfully prosecuting the Carney government and its agenda in the eyes of Canadians. Those numbers, I mean, the other thing that 338canada.com has shown is that when you look at all the polls, there's anywhere from a 6 to 13 point lead across the board for the overall party, not just government approval, but the Liberals are leading the entire Conservatives, not just preferred Prime Minister, the likability of Mr. Carney versus Mr. Poilievre. The parties themselves now, that gap is widening. So I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, gap is wide, and Liberals building base even in Alberta at this point, which is very notable.
Conservatives think that they would lose seats in Saskatchewan, that Carney, that Carney is eating into the western base of support. So
to prosecute properly, I think one question has to be asked by the opposition parties. Are you better off today than you were 12 months ago when Mr. Carney arrived on the scene? And this is not what they're doing. They're prosecuting the time that Mr. Carney was in the Bank of England. It's not relevant to Canadians' life today. It's not something that they can use to argue that the price of bread has increased over the last 12 months. It's not relevant. So it's fanciful arguments that's not, laying any punch on the Liberal brand, in my sense.
You've got to hope that Carney comes out and starts talking about the price of arugula or something like that, or the price of filet mignon. I mean, right now, it's a hard argument to land. Most people think and believe that Carney has the credibility to at least try. So,
he's got a lot of credibility on the economy, but he has to deliver. And we just don't know right now. The jury's really out. I mean, we don't know if we're going to be heading into recession because of the oil crisis caused by the war in Iran, and we don't know if we're going to be able to get a deal with the United States. And if we don't get a deal with the United States, that's even more job losses. And if you get job losses coupled with AI coming down like a freight train, which will obviously mean a lot more job losses. If people start losing their jobs and the cost of living goes up, and the Liberals, Mr. Carney's plans are not immediate. They're long-term plans he's set out. The situation could change very quickly. I'm just not sure that Pierre Poilievre is the kind of guy that's going to be able to prosecute the case for the Conservatives anymore. I think he's baked in now with Canadian voters. I'm not sure he can turn it around. And that is the onus now put on the government with a majority. Mark Carney will have to start proving things.
And on that front, I would add that it's true that Mr. Carney, now that he has a majority, the pressure to deliver the goods is more intense. But I will also argue that because of the erratic behavior of Donald Trump in Washington, Canadians are understanding that maybe it will take a little bit more time to achieve the results that he wants to achieve. So they'll be more patient with Mr. Carney because of what's happening at southern border, because of what's happening in the Middle East, because of what Mr. Carney is trying to build alliances with the European Union. That, I think, it's a long-term project, but also I think Mr. Carney cannot neglect the short-term problems that Canadians are dealing with.
The other interesting dynamic that happened this week was that Avi Lewis, the new NDP leader, entered the fray after having, spent the week after he won leadership mourning the loss of his father. But this week he landed with a very strong policy proposal and flagged something that none of us really were that aware of, digital surveillance pricing. And to the point of people feeling that AI and digital surveillance of their phones and their data and their searches online are now going to affect how much they have to pay at the cash register for a range of services. And, suddenly there's an effective voice arguing for real people's concerns on the left coming into the fray. And so Pierre Poilievre's got to, not only has Mark Carney got to pay more attention, Pierre Poilievre's got to pay attention to that too. He may not be the sole voice of ordinary Canadians as he would like to be.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to pay and pray when you get to the end of the grocery line when you look at the price of things right now. Listen, before we're done, you mentioned the coalition that is now behind Mark Carney. I think it's worthwhile to spend just a couple of minutes on this because I don't have a lot of time. But we now have Marilyn Gladu, someone who's voted more socially conservative as a part of this Liberal caucus. We have a former New Democrat, two former New Democrats, Dolly Begum coming in from the Ontario NDP, now federally Liberal. What does the Liberal Party stand for anymore? Because that, again, was a question being asked at the Montreal Convention. Doesn't matter what they stand for so long as they govern.
They stand for what Jean Chrétien said was the best part of his 40-year career, which was winning elections. That's what they stand for. They very much are showing that. But, you know, the argument that winning elections is important because if you win elections, you do get to exercise the power and implement an agenda. But right now, look, I think that's a party with a broad range of views inside it. How long it holds, that'll be interesting. You and I heard almost everyone you talked to last weekend was a Liberal who you might think of as representing the traditional sort of, you know, range of Liberal values, was questioning, what are we doing? Oh, well, I guess, you know, we're getting to a majority is what we're doing.
Yeah, what are we doing? Pass me a drink. You know, so.
Well, it's been said that the Liberal Party now is a Big Ten party. I agree with that. I think Mr. Carney is making room for people who are more on the conservative side and on the left side. So he's building a party that has two wings that are fully deployed and making sure that the Liberal Party can survive elections. That's what it is, basically. And also implement policies.
The thing that I was really struck by last week, and a senior Liberal said to me when I was trying to write about what is the Carney Party, how is he defining the Liberals? I don't think the Liberals are defining him. I think he's redefining the Liberal brand. And the most, I think, relevant comment was made to me is that we are an anti-Trump coalition. Let's face it, that's what we are now. And that's where Canadians want us to be. And to me, that was very striking. And then I spoke to someone who's very close to Carney who said, we're a pro-Canada. It's a pro-Canada approach. But the flip side of that is very much the anti-Trump coalition. I thought that was a frank, honest admission, but it raises questions about just then what are your guiding principles? What are your foundational values?
In my mind, it's a return to the past. The Liberal Party under Jean Chrétien had a lot of social conservatives, about 25 of them, and they were actually, some of them were even from the area where Marilyn Gladu was from. This is not a surprise. This is a Coliseum-type Liberal Party, but Jean Chrétien had that too, and he was benefited, of course, that the Conservative Party had split in two, and a lot of these people had gone, conservatives, but also red conservatives, had gone into the Liberal tent. But this is the Liberal Party. It's a very, very adaptable political party. That Tonda's point, their number one goal is to keep power.
Yeah. You know, I forget where I read it, but someone's saying that Mark Carney right now is defining a new era of nationalism, and maybe that was being discussed in Montreal at the Liberal National Convention as well.
A new era. I don't think Mark Carney's defining a new era of nationalism. I think Donald Trump has generated and created a new era of nationalism. And the Liberals are taking political advantage of that nationalist sentiment.
Yeah, and look, Canadians are scared of what that guy in the White House is going to do. And they feel that Mark Carney is the best person to deal with him. Bottom line.
Okay. Well, we watch. Thank you for that. But before we're done, looking
at Tonda.
I always look at Tonda when I get to this part. Time now for the yeas and the nays of the week. Bob, I'll begin with you.
Okay, a yay is Senator Hassan Yousaf, who has put the Liberals on the spot. They promised that they would give the same kind of recognition and benefits to Persian Gulf and Afghan war veterans as they did to Second World War and Korean War veterans. They haven't fulfilled that promise. He's put a bill before the Senate to shame them into doing so, and good for him for doing that.
Okay, and nay?
Nay is to Christine Fox, who is the Deputy Minister of Defense. Ethics Commissioner came out with just a really tough knock on her for giving favorable treatment to hire a friend of hers, a family friend. And rather than accepting that and saying, I will learn from that mistake, I shouldn't have done that, she dug in and said she was doing it for diversity reasons because this was a black person, and nobody believes that. And I think her days in government may be numbered because of the way she's handled that.
Okay, Tonda?
Well, let me go to my nay first. My nay is Mr. Poilievre describing the majority as fabricated, manufactured, dirty, and his MPs who picked up on that same line of attack, I think has done a real disservice to Canadians' understanding of what parliamentary democracy is all about and the principles that underlie it. And I've written a piece about that. But I think that legally, constitutionally, and politically, this argument is false. It comes very close to suggesting that, somehow Mr. Carney's political progress is somehow suspect in a way that I think doesn't help Canadians understand how the system works. So nay to that kind of language. It doesn't belong in Canada, doesn't have a place in the political discourse. My yay actually is a zoom out. My yay goes to the astronauts. Then the news conference that they gave when they came back, that zoom out, their perspective that we're all just custodians of one planet and the teamwork that's required, I found that such an inspiring message this week.
And it made everybody happy.
Oh my gosh, it was just magic.
My yay goes to Christine Fréchette, the new Quebec Premier, second woman to achieve that goal of governing the province of Quebec. So I think I wish her success, and I hope she inspires other women to enter politics. It's a very important voice to have and to promote. And my nays goes to Pierre Poilievre for starting a fight over whose resume is bigger than the other one. That's futile, it's childish, it is not worth it. It's not, digne d'un politicien, if I may say, in French.
Okay. And one day we'll have to have a conversation about whether or not Fréchette actually can change the calculus for the CAQ in Quebec, right? Yeah. Because not zero anymore, but we'll see what happens. Okay, before one more thing, the look ahead in the days to come, as we still have a few more weeks here while Parliament sits. What are you looking out for?
Whether the Americans and the Iranians can get a deal next week. We hope they can, because they could push the world into a global recession if they can't get that agreement.
Well, Ambassador Mark Wiseman is going to appear at a committee next week for the first time. He's done no interviews since being named ambassador to Washington, and so he's working the social circuit down there. So I'll be very interested to see his take on what progress, if any, we're making.
Okay.
I'll be watching that same thing, the testimony of Ambassador Wiseman before the Committee of the House of Commons. I think he will be facing very much pointed questions, and that's the first time that Canadians will hear actually his take on the future of CUSMA. So a very important meeting with the ambassador in the United States.
Okay, so we're all watching for that, and we know that the spring economic update is going to happen in a week and a half time, so a lot to talk about next while, although I'm still wrapping my head around spring rather than fall. Okay, Bob, Tonda, Joël Denis, thank you, as always.
Have a good weekend.
You too. And that is our episode for this week. I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for joining us. You have been listening to The Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio, a primetime politics podcast from CPAC.